right, first I thought I would start with a little display here. People always ask, well, what did they wear? Well, my outfit would not, it's kind of in between really traditional, way back, original African and modern. It's kind of in between. This is what you would maybe see, would be pretty common out in the villages where I was at. But in the city, they look pretty much just like everybody sitting here. It's not common to see this kind of dress in the city. Kai is the example of the Maasai warrior, and the Maasai people still live this way. They still live in the little mud hut, and they still kill their animals and live with the big wildebeests and whatever. And so this is a headdress Alora has on, a typical necklace and a bracelet, and this is like a scepter. To my knowledge, somebody asked, is it a weapon? Did they use it to beat people or something? I don't think so. I really think it is more of just like a sign of status that they would take and have with them, like as a staff, yeah, as like a tribal chief or something like that. I don't know. And then this is a shield. They would actually be, of course, much larger, but I got the condensed size to put on Micah's wall in the office. So, and then there's some little spears and whatnot back there. And then Tirza has on a beaded necklace that we got there and her African dress, which we walked all of Nairobi, I'm convinced, to find. And then they don't typically make dresses for kids. Usually when you go for a dress like this, you go and you have them take measurements and you have it made. So to find ready-made things of any kind where we were at was very unusual. Now you can go to Nairobi and get your American clothes or Western clothes, but to find ready-made kids' clothes was very challenging. So Alora's dress too, we had to walk quite a ways for. So okay, you guys can go sit down. No, Tirza's. I love Tirza. We walked and we walked and we walked and then we walked some more, and then just for fun we decided to keep walking. So it was a long ways. You want to stay up here? You don't have to. Can you go turn off the first 2 rows of lights at least? No, the next 2. Okay, so if I stand here, Cindy, are you still good? Okay. These are generally speaking in chronological order, and so it might seem like you bounce around a lot, but that's because that's how my trip went. So I spent about 8 hours on this yesterday trying to put it all together. I had almost 1,000 pictures to go through and try to make a story out of, so we may jump around a little bit, but I'll do my best. Flying was all new to Alora, so these were a lot of her pictures. She really wanted to capture the moment, especially for Tirza and Kai, because they've never flown before either. Okay, as the running gag, I have lots of pictures of toilets. When I stayed in Germany, all the it'd take me 5 minutes sometimes to figure out how to flush a toilet. And so it started back when I was an exchange student in Germany, taking pictures of toilets. My mom came to visit. I found out she had been taking pictures of toilets, and so it's just kind of a running gag in our family. So the plastic would come out around the toilet when you flushed it. It would put a new piece of plastic around it. This is in Chicago. So from Super Sanitary, and then that'll continue later. This is Kenya, and right there is Nairobi. First, we went over to Kitui. I think that's Kitui, I can't tell. But over here somewhere is Kitui. This is a very hot, dry region, although in my opinion, they still had a lot more vegetation than we do. So, dry is a matter of perspective. And then we came back to Nairobi, and then we traveled up here to the hospital for Kozi, and then down all the way to the border of Tanzania, and up over in South Nyanza. This is where Hezekiah's church is, where I'll talk about him. And then we traveled up, and we got to stay on the shore of Lake Victoria, which was really gorgeous. It was like honeymoon resort. I figure I'll take Micah there sometime if I can ever talk him into traveling all the way to Africa. Still, even in the nice honeymoon resort type hotel, no air conditioning. There was a fan though. You still have to have mosquito nets over your bed. So it's not quite what we would think of when we think of a fabulous place to stay.
Can you give them some perspective
Well, I can't say by hours because the roads are horrific. It was 6.5 hours from here-ish back over to Nairobi, but the roads they're horrible. I have a picture of them. So I don't know distance. I know that all of Kenya is about 3 times the size of Kansas. So if that gives you a ballpark. So I would imagine from here to here, traveling maybe half of Kansas or a little more probably. Yeah. All the way from Kitui to over here would probably be the length of Kansas, I'm guessing. Okay, so mosquito nets are our new best friends. Unfortunately, whoops, sorry, wrong button. Mine had holes in it. That wasn't very reassuring. So I took it and tied it in knots to kind of get the holes to be closed. But Alora slept for, well, until 12 or 2:30 the next afternoon, so she was exhausted. Just the plants. I have so many pictures of plants. They were absolutely incredible. This was one of my favorites. These were like tubes of pine needles. They were so cool. Maurice and Vimbanashi Omyulubi. This is the pastor that we stayed with. He's actually the apostle over a group of churches. So I say Pastor Maurice because that's more like how we call him. We don't usually say apostle something. But he's actually he has churches in Uganda, Tanzania, I think maybe even Somalia, and then all over in this whole area of Kenya. And then he places overseers then over that a specific region, and then under that then is a pastor. So very first century church setup. He's more like a missionary who goes and plants churches and then gets an overseer and then has a pastor underneath. So this is their house, just this section of it. They were all connected. I think I have a better picture later. And each household has its own gate. And so these were some of the different gates. They were just really fascinating. I don't know, it's kind of a status thing or just, hey, I like this kind of gate. I'm not sure. But this actually was a 4-bedroom house with 3 bathrooms. So it was really nice size as far as that goes. And we were in the city of Nairobi, 4 million people. He says that where he lives, it's bigger than this, obviously, but that gated community has the same number of people as Hoxie, 1,200. So I said, we have 1,200 people in our town, and he goes, what? We had a whole conversation because he just couldn't grasp having so few people. That's a teeny tiny little village. I said, well, yeah, it's a small town, but no concept. He said, that's how many people live in our little community. So this is the guardhouse to the gated community, and they're there all night in that little thing, and I never thought it got very cold. They were always putting on big giant coats, and I'm still sweating. So, but they stay there all night and in their coats, and they just kind of huddle down. I never really figured out why, though, because they never checked ID, they never checked anything, they never, as far as I know, they didn't even recognize Maurice, so I was trying to figure out what they actually protected from. But I asked twice, 2 different people. I said, so do you have problems with vandalism or people attacking or wild animals? What's with the razor wire? That shows that it's private property. That was it. I said, so I asked somebody else again. I was like, so what's with the razor wire? Apparently they're very serious about their privacy. And then you can see the high-tech electrical system there. This is inside their house, just some different shots. I do want you to notice, well, you can't see, but the couches and things, you can be purchased without cushions as a way of having it cheaper. And you buy everything on the side of the road. There was beds on the side of the road, couches, chairs, cooking utensils, chests, everything you could ever need is you just buy it on the side of the road. And some really nice Victorian furniture, I decided, and some wonderful pots. I said, I need to buy a house there and furnish it, and then just move there, or stay there whenever I go visit. So it was some really beautiful stuff. But anyway, so he did have cushions, but they had been squished down so much that you couldn't tell. It was like sitting on a board. Like I said, though, it really was a nice size house. inside, and let's see. However, this is their stove, and these were their cupboards. This is a water boiler. You cannot drink the water there, even the Nairobians. And so we were always had to boil the water or buy bottled water. You will see these absolutely everywhere. They look like they will fall down in a stiff wind, but they would be piled with stuff, heavy produce. And so they're obviously very sturdy. They would also use just these sticks as their scaffolding to build buildings. I saw, like, not maybe a skyscraper, but a 15-story building, and the scaffolding's made out of these little sticks. I was like, okay. I said, but the inside isn't that, right? It's like steel. And he said, yeah. But it was just incredible, and they're absolutely everywhere. And then, just slightly above this, they would put another wall on every side, and that's what people lived in sometimes too. Okay, we went to Kitui the second day I was there, and this is the church office, this side right here. I don't know what the other side was. And here's Maurice and Vimbainashi. They graciously said we could call her Vimbai, but I like the name Vimbainashi. So we went from really sanitary to not so much. Yeah, enough said there. Kitui, this is the inside of their church. And over here, this is Pastor Hezekiah. He was actually just traveling with us to visit some of the other churches. We'll see his church a little bit later. And this is their new church building. It's probably about 3 times the size of the one we actually worshiped in. For years, they literally collect money and buy a brick, collect money and buy a brick, and put it together. And we saw hundreds of buildings like this, if not thousands. They build that much, and then they don't have the money to put a roof on it. And so I said, are those in progress, or are they falling down? Because some of them looked like they were more on the other end of deterioration. And they said it just depends. And I thought, well, take the roof from the one that's falling down and put it on the new one. But I don't know. It was different. Okay, this is them worshiping. Marge, can you click on the image? It'll play. I've decided that I'm part Kenyan because I had a blast dancing and enjoying their worship with them. It was wonderful. They would, it was exuberant and everybody's all dancing around everywhere, and yet it was still very orderly. It wasn't crazy. And they just really had a good time. We're keeping the volume soft because the audio on that camera is not good at all, and it was really distorted. I really want you to see this pastor's wife. She likes to get down. And there were a lot of women in this particular service because it was in the middle of the day, and so a lot of the men were working. I came to find out later on, I got to visit a lady, and that dress that she's wearing was actually purchased for a wedding. And so they go ahead and use those dresses because it's a big deal to have any kind of nice dress at all. And so... Yeah, it would be crazy because you'd see somebody herding cows or sheep or something down the ditch in the road, and they're wearing a full suit. And they wear them all the time. They may only have 2 sets of clothes, but oftentimes they're very, very, very nice. I'm not talking just a casual suit. They were nice suits. So that was really different. But then you also had the people who were very, very, very poor and had holes in all their clothes. So it just depended. I said, though, just on a casual or regular everyday part of the week, they would outdress us anytime. Because they dress, like we're dressed now, that's how they wear during their whole week a lot of times. Maurice would actually go ahead and preach in English. I'm not sure if that was just for my benefit. This is Maurice. but I wasn't sure, but it sounded like they regularly had someone to interpret. And so this is his interpreter. And so I think that was kind of a regular part of the service, to have it in both languages. For me, however, it took a lot of getting used to. One of the God sightings of the whole trip was, it was amazing because there are billions of churches in the world. And Mike, connected us, Mike Klump. But I said, Mike, what do these people believe? Where do they stand? You just really never know. And he says, well, they believe the Bible, but they're still kind of reserved. I said they're a lot like us. I said, okay, well, what about gifts of the Spirit or things like that? And he says, well, yeah, they believe it, but they don't talk about it very much. Well, I come to find out as I'm talking with Maurice, and kept asking questions and kind of whatever. They believe exactly what we believe. I couldn't believe that out of all of the billions of churches, even here in the United States, that we don't, quite jive, which is okay. It's all about Jesus. It doesn't matter. But the one church that God connected me with on the other side of the world believes exactly what we believe. It was incredible. I thought it was awesome. And I really feel like we are permanently connected, that God really does this wasn't just a one-time mission trip. This was something where he wants to connect our body with their body so that we can encourage and support each other. Just amazed me. This is the church at Katui. We took a picture in front of their new building. I learned on this day that you don't take a picture of people that are that dark in the shadows. So, had to learn the hard way. Then after we left there, the pastor of that church purchased a basket for me and a little basket for Alora. We didn't bring that one. But these ladies are church ladies that work very hard, and they strip the leaves of the really tall cactus plants, and I didn't get a picture of that, and they strip the fibers, the little teeny tiny individual fibers, and then they braid them into what you see here, and they dye them. You can see the yellow dye and the bright pink, and they drape it all over these plants as their drying racks. And so then my basket that you see back there is that one right there. And they actually want to connect with like a retailer here in the United States. So if anybody has an idea of where that we could get them connected, they do this. They've already connected with some other people, but any place else that they can continue to have a resource through to have finances for the women of the church and to also help to support the church itself. They would really like to get connected. Got to travel through the Great Rift Valley. This was the only day I ever got cold. It says on the website, what temperatures are 85 and lows of 55. So I'm taking several long sleeve shirts and long pants and things, and I was so hot the whole time I was there. I think I wore one long sleeve shirt for about half an hour, and the rest of the time I was just hot and sweaty. So right here, though, when there was a cold front coming through and it got very chilly. They made fences out of absolutely anything. This picture didn't come out very good on for the slide here. These are tires that they sliced and unfolded and made into a fence. I saw barbed wire, stones, boards, even the poisonous plants and cactuses. There was one whole region that we drove through. Every pasture was lined with cacti. So it was very cool. These bags up here I think they were grain bags, and they then sell the bags to be walls and things on your house for the really, really poor people. And these, like I said, this is a little shack, and then you've got the tin walls. It was pretty different. I had a whole list. There's like 15 things that I saw walls made out of. We did get to stop and see Donna just very, very briefly. It was just a fluke that we happened to be going through her direction, and so we did not have an appointment. I can tell her parents that the security on that school is very good. They were not going to let us in to see her. But finally, Maurice said, hey, security guard, just come sit in the car with us, take us in there and everything, she'll be okay. And so we did get to see her. I didn't take a picture, though, sorry. Let's Some more of the really wild plants. We've decided that Dr. Seuss lives there. This is only one of the really bizarre things we saw. We got to see baboons. They said monkeys were not in that section of the forest anymore. And sure enough, the day we drove through, there was some baboons there. So that was awesome. Yeah, this is on the road. This is beside our car. And the produce was just everywhere. This was alongside of the side of the road. They would just have this stand. And I asked if the stands were like, is this my stand? I built this stand, you can't use it. And they said, no. You build the stand and then anybody can use it. So those other little structures that I showed earlier, those are just commercial buildings, if you will. And so everybody can use them. And so then I thought, what are those? It's a little, it's a foot wide all down the ditch. And then later on I saw that they just stack all their produce on there like that. These are cactus trees. They were bizarre looking. And when they die, they just turn gray. They don't fall over or anything. It's just a big gray tree. The economy there is just, it thrives in some areas, and like Nairobi is a huge city, has skyscrapers, looks like any other city here. But there are many people that are just idle and sitting around, and so and there's just people everywhere, the whole country. We couldn't go 5 miles without somebody walking along the side of the road or being in a cluster of people just out in the middle of nowhere. There's just people everywhere. I told them I'm going to send them a picture of Hoxie Main Street on Saturday afternoon. Ain't nobody. And so it was just, I'm not used to the city for one thing, but this isn't even in Nairobi, even just out in the villages. There's just people everywhere, all the time. Many are idle, but many also work very, very, very hard. And but there's no money to go around. So even if they've worked really hard, either they can't get very much for what they've made because this person doesn't have the money to pay it, or there's simple overproduction. You see that, that stand with all the tomatoes. Well, there's 50 of them in a row. So, how do you get the people to come to your stand? These are just a few examples of the food. I tried to take a picture of every meal, so if anybody ever wants to see that, it was interesting. This is just tea. They were colonized by the British or whatever, and so we often had tea. It's 115 degrees outside, but we're having hot tea. So, but it was very good. It's called chai, but I don't think it's chai tea like we have here. I'm not sure. I'll have to try one. But you can see it right there. It's just kind of creamy. And Laura liked black tea, so when she could, she still took that. This was toast. It was this big. So I don't know what that was all about. And it was acceptable to eat with your fingers, and so I often did. That was very practical. So not quite the improvement I was hoping for. It is in the ground. It's like a bedpan that's recessed into the ground, into the concrete. And apparently it wasn't flushing that day. So, okay, this is a Maasai man. They are very partial to red. So Kai's going to dress up for Halloween as a Maasai warrior, so we got him a big red cloak. This was a terrible picture because I was taking it through the back of our windshield, but this man has an entire furniture set on the back of his bike. And it's a motorcycle, which is called a piki-piki. And they call it that because when they were first made, they go piki-piki-piki-piki-piki-piki-piki. And so you would see, piki-pikis are taxis. And so you would sometimes see up to, I saw 4 children and I saw 3 adults in addition to the driver on one of these things. And they are not large motorcycles at all. And I said, okay, so all these people squished together on there. I said, will they be, do they know each other? And he says, no, not necessarily. I'm thinking, oh boy. And you're taking your life in your hands when you drive in Kenya, but especially Nairobi or any of the towns. They are insane. Driving rules are suggestions. And yet I hear it's better than most of the other African countries, so we'll see. We were driving along, and Laura said she desperately wanted to see some zebras, and he said, no, we just don't see zebras in this part of the area anymore. And I said, God, we would like to see some zebras. Amen. We saw 3 herds that day. So not only did we see monkeys that don't exist anymore, but we saw zebras that aren't there anymore. So God takes care of his girls. Okay, you can see they stack anything on a bicycle, and oftentimes those are full of water. So that is a heavy load. They are like a cooking oil, a vegetable oil, something like that. And then when they're empty, they reuse them and they resell them to people to use as water containers. This is charcoal. It's they've gone ahead and burned part of it, and then they resell it as charcoal for the little it's hard to explain. It's kind of a camp stove that the really, really poor people use on the streets. This is where my dress was made. That's a dress shop. These are just a few of the City of Truth churches. That is Maurice's ministry. It's called City of Truth churches. And so this one up here is actually in Tanzania. This one is Hezekiah's church. That's where I actually got to preach. Okay, the outlets are shaped different, obviously, but you have to turn them on. So it took me a little bit to figure that out. I'm thinking, why isn't this working? So I had to flip the switch. And I was so excited when we got to the hotel. It had a fan. And then I found out it didn't plug into that particular kind of plug. I thought, why is it mounted on the wall if it won't plug in? But it was okay because it was cooler in that region. And so it wasn't as hot. And I took this just for our Gideons in the audience. I knew you guys would be excited to see a Gideon Bible placed in the hotel. I'll let you read that a little bit. Enough said. Alora really liked that even the little kids would carry the other kids on their back. That cloth that I have back there is a wrap that you put around yourself, and it's called a lesso. But it was an apron, it was a hitch up to put your baby on your back, you put it over your head if you got too hot, it can be a tablecloth, it's everything you ever need, so very practical. They had lunch out on the lawn while we were there, and if you pulled out a camera, all of a sudden you had 40 kids that were right there ready to take a picture. This little girl, God gave me a word for her, that she has the joy of God in her heart, and that he told her to dance for the joy of the Lord. And it was really cool because later on I found out that her dad was sitting up here in the front of the church while I was preaching, and you could just tell he was just receiving everything I was saying, and it was just filling him, and he had joy on the inside of him. And when I found out that they were related, it was just the coolest thing. It's like and I told him, we had to have a translator because he didn't speak very much English, but I said, you have given your joy of the Lord to your daughter. And that really blessed him, so it was cool. Overseer Daniel, remember I said there's Apostle Maurice, and then Overseer, he's over this area in South Nyanza, and then Pastor Hezekiah was the pastor of that church that we just saw, or the kids you just saw. This is his household, and it's a traditional setup where they used to have them build them separate, farther apart, but they now, because of thievery and stuff, they build them closer together, and you can't see it in here, but they would put little, like those sticks that I showed you, those sticks would be in between the houses to create a fence so that people couldn't get in. But there was a hole in one of them. I said, well, what's the hole for? He says, that's so the dog can get out and roam the grounds and protect them and then come back in. So it was the doggy door. But each one of these, this is the kitchen, this is the granary where they keep, and like they had tomatoes ripening at that point. Their sitting room, bedroom, where the goats, that's the barn basically, and then the kids' room over here. This was a tobacco drying hut, and then this is his family. So Overseer Daniel is somebody that I would like our church to consider supporting specifically. They are raising money for him to get a motorcycle, and because he has to visit all the churches in the area, and right now he either walks or rides a bike. And like Pastor Hezekiah walks, it's 2 hours for him to ride his bike to get to his church that he pastors, and it's 3 hours to walk. So it's a big deal if they can purchase a motorcycle, And they were raising money while I was there, and they took faith pledges, and some people were pledging the equivalent of about 25 cents. And that was a really big deal for them. And so I told them that I would like our church to try to partner with them and see if we could help get him a motorcycle. I can't remember. I didn't write it down. I want to say they said it was 120,000 shilling, which is $12,000. But I might have my zero wrong on that or something, because Micah said that'd be a really expensive, really nice bike, and even here. And so I may be off on that. But I know that the things like the surgery for Cozy was 45,000 shilling, which was not a major surgery, but it wasn't small, and that would only be $450. And yet it took all of their finances. When I got there, I ended up having to pay for all of our hotels, all of our meals, and the rental of a car, because they didn't have any money left. And that was fine. That's what you guys raised the money for, so that I would have it when I needed it. But what we think of as a huge amount of money here would be absolutely unattainable there. I mean, they just wouldn't even be able to get it ever. So it's quite the shift. This is me preaching. Like I said, I had to preach through a translator, so that took some getting used to. It was nice when Maurice took over, because I knew him and I got used to his voice, and I knew when he was coming to the end of a sentence, whereas with the other translator, I was always stepping on his toes, and it was really awkward. Here, this was so cool. I got to be part of ordaining 4 pastors. And so we laid hands on them and set them apart for the ministry. And that was probably one of the highlights of my trip. That was really, really cool. This is Pastor Thomas. We were worshiping and praying for unity. And then here, I love this particular picture, because these are the 3 people that I felt especially and specifically connected to, even though I met probably 20 pastors. Pastor Maurice, or Apostle Maurice, Overseer Daniel, and Pastor Hezekiah. Hezekiah said he's coming to America, so you can be praying for him, because he has the faith to do it. But the finances, like I said, a plane ticket here would be more money than they've ever seen in a lifetime, probably. So I told him, he said, you get the plane ticket, we'll pay for everything when you're here. Ugali was one of the main dishes. Hezekiah said, when I come to your house, if you don't serve me ugali, I won't feel like I've eaten anything. So, especially in Western Africa, where we were in this part. It's grits is what I guess. Just really, really, really thick, like cream of wheat. Except it was a corn base. And you, like I said, you eat with your fingers, and so you'd pick up a blob of ugali, and you would shove your vegetables or whatever into it, and then eat it that way, because they didn't always have utensils. She's making it up here in this pot. This was Hezekiah's wife, I think, is what he said. So you can see the bowl there. They didn't have utensils. They didn't have big spoons. Well, they did, but they didn't use them a lot of times. They would just take their bowl and cut it in half, and they used that bowl for all kinds of amazing things. And right here, they would always try to wash your hands before you ate, since especially you saw the restrooms, and there's no sink in there to wash your hands, so they always tried to make sure you had water. This is their church. This was the restroom at that church. This was one of my favorites because it just made me laugh. There's no filled-in wall here. It's just sticks. And the only thing I could figure was the vegetation was kind of high over that on that side of it, and so they didn't figure anybody could see through that side. So yeah, there was, you kind of posted a guard so nobody came in while you were in there. At least I did. This is the inside of the South Nyanza Church. This was filled with like 50, 60 people. And the wall's right here. It's not like there's a lot more space to put people, so they were just kind of everywhere. That's Pastor Hezekiah's daughter. And Alora, wherever she went, all the kids would come shouting, Mzungu, Mzungu. And that just means white person. So I finally asked, I said, what is black person? They said, Muafrika. So I could say, Muafrika. Right back to them. And the kids in school all learn English. And so we had translators, but lots of people spoke English. And every time, anywhere we went, the kids, how are you? How are you? How are you? And it got to the point where we had like 60 of them walking down the street behind us, all saying, how are you? How are you? How are you? How are you? That could drive a person absolutely up the wall. Finally, Vimbai graciously told them to go away. So these are a lot of the different pastors for that area. The Mzungu visit encourages them beyond what we can even understand. Vimbai she tried to explain it to me. She said, you just don't get it. You don't understand. Just you being here changes our lives. The fact that you express the idea that we have value. It was really amazing, even some of the simplest things that I would say that we take as regular phrases here, it was so new to them. And it was neat, but at the same time it was kind of sad, the broken spirits that they had, because if you think about the fact that Britain settled them, they went in, they wanted to break their spirits. They wanted them to just be slaves. And that really reflects still. They don't believe that they're worthwhile. I actually had a young man walking and talking with me saying, oh, you Americans, you're just amazing. You're just amazing. You're so strong. And I'm going, what's the big deal? Well, you're boxers. And I said, they're not normal people, But he still just had the concept that Americans were so strong. And he says, not like us Kenyans. We just don't have any strength. And I thought, wow, that's incredible. And so as church, almost all of what Vimbai and Maurice preached on was, you are valuable. You do have strength. And so it was pretty interesting. All the billboards said, we're building a stronger Kenya. We can do it. And I also noticed that there was there was none. I saw one little poster for something that was mildly inappropriate. And otherwise, there's no sexy women on billboards. There's no, it's all like the 1950s here or something, where they're just, it was amazing. Yeah, it was just amazing. It was wonderful. Okay, this is a bus station. All just kind of parked out there. When it's time to go, they start honking their horn a lot, saying, I'm leaving. If you're going to come, you need to get on now. There's a picky carrying somebody. And Vimbai was given a chicken before she left there. So she takes a chicken on the bus for a 6.5-hour drive back to Nairobi. This is called a mutatu, and that just really is a general word for transportation, public transportation. And so there was this size, which is just slightly bigger than a minivan, and then there was a much larger one that I'll show a little bit later, and even a picky would be considered a mutatu because you rode on it. This holds 13 passengers plus the driver, slightly larger than a minivan. Oh, sorry, I forgot it. And then if there's no more room, you hang on at the door and hang out the side of the car. And sometimes you'd see 2 or 3 people hanging out the side as they're going down the road. Oh, there you go. There's the matatu. Apparently matatus, the actual true matatu is like this. They are painted in beautiful variety of color, and it is only a Kenyan thing. I didn't know that at first, and so that's neat. This is called a tuk-tuk. Again, tuk-tuk-tuk-tuk-tuk-tuk-tuk-tuk. That's the sound that it made. And so I saw an entire couch being transported on one of these once. These are the roads. So on the day that we traveled almost 8 hours, I actually had bruises on my back and on my hips because of rocking back and forth in the car so hard. It was very rough. Now, they are working on them. There was corruption in the transportation or whatever infrastructure department, and they finally got it figured out. So all of Kenya is working on all the roads right now. And so it was crazy. You think, work on one section at a time, but no, they decided to do them all of them. But once they're done, they actually run just like a interstate here. They're very nice. Hello. We visited some farms. That was another project. Visited lots of farms. They let me carry a thing on my head. These are banana trees. And Alora was cooking, so they held a banana leaf over her, and when they were getting bored, they started touching her hair, and they liked it. Okay, this little man, he was one of my favorite stories of the whole trip. We were walking by a fish pond, and he starts yelling at me, and I'm like, okay, what did I do now, And I finally asked somebody, and they said, no, he wants you to take his picture. And I said, oh, okay. So I get around to the other side of the pond, and he had his hat on, and he was just sitting there, and he realized I was going to take the picture. He took his hat off, and he held his cup, and he posed, It was just a riot. So when I went back around, I showed it to him on the screen, and they translate it for me. He says, I look very beautiful. So, and then this lady's hair I just thought was so cool, so I took that one. This is inside one of the schools. This was a kind of just a volunteer project. All of the Kenyan kids now are supposed to be in school. The government says, make schools. Well, they didn't provide any way to do it or anything, and so people just kind of had to decide we're going to do schools. No, I've got to keep it short, sweetie. There's so much. I've already not kept it short. The second grade meets outside because they don't have a school. They don't have a room. So this is a place. This is how they collect water to drink. Is they collect their rainwater in the pot. This is a granary, and they often don't use those anymore because of theft. And this was a goat cage. They keep them up off the ground because of like ticks carrying diseases. And a chicken cage. Chicken wasn't there. He just happened to walk by right as I snapped the picture. I said, oh, thank you for modeling. Fish head soup. It was actually tilapia. And I told them what that can cost here in a restaurant, and they were absolutely blown out of the water. But I took a picture for the fish heads and didn't notice the dish next to it at first. I did. I didn't eat the chicken leg itself, but the soup was delicious. It was very good. I only found one food that I really didn't like. It was these little dried fish. They were gross. But everything else, Mike is expecting me to lose weight. I think I gained. Most of the meals were rice and beans, and so I ate a lot of rice and beans, but they were very good. Like I said, Nairobi itself is a city. So this is your shopping center, and this is the buildings there. So I learned to carry toilet paper wrapped up in my waistband, because otherwise you didn't have any. This is the children's home. This is what Mike Klump got started, and it's an orphanage really, but they don't like to call it that because of the connotation, that they are not wanted. So they call it a children's home, and there's 4 girls and 4 boys that live there. And Alora got to speak there. Marge, can you click on this one?
She told me, and I said I want to go to heaven, but Mom said that I couldn't go to heaven until I asked Jesus to be in my heart. So I said that I wanted to go to heaven, and so, or I said I wanted to be forgiven, and I want to go to heaven and be with Daddy. So so I prayed, and I had Jesus in my heart then, and so I said,
Sorry. I love that she refers to Daddy. She's talking about God. I want to go be with Daddy. So that was awesome. She did a very good job. Yeah. Okay, this is where we did the open air meeting. And I started crying while we worshiped. I thought, first of all, I never thought I would preach in an open air meeting of any kind. And I'm preaching in Kenya in an open air meeting. It's like God's plans are just so much bigger and different than we ever think of that they're going to be for us. This is the community right around that open air area. This is actually pictures are being taken from the school where we had church in Nairobi. Things that you can pray for, really revelation for the Kenyan believers to understand that God values them, because they really don't grasp that at all. To overcome the poverty mentality, one of the farms that we visited, the one with the goats, they had got it. They weren't a Christian group, but they were saying, we can do this. We've got the power. We're going to do it. We're going to overcome. And they had already accomplished so much. It was really neat. I think, I don't know if as a church we would support them, but I think, as a family, I think we're going to support them just because they are working so hard to try to overcome the environment that they're in. And then how does God want us to connect as a church, and how does God want you to connect with Kenya personally? And if you have any questions along those lines, I'd be more than happy to talk with you about it, because I really think that, like I said, God doesn't want this to just be me going over to Kenya one time. He wants us to be involved in their lives. Laura got to do some really fun things. She got to ride on a camel. This isn't at a zoo. This is just walking down the street after church. And then there was a lady on the side that started yelling at us. I thought, okay, what do we do this time? And, usually it's like, hey, just take my picture. Well, she was yelling because she says, you're taking pictures of my trees. I want you to pay me because you took pictures of my trees. They aren't her trees. They're trees on the side of the road. But they are told that Americans take pictures and then go sell them for lots of money. And if you think about it, that's what artists do. And so she was convinced that I was going to go sell this picture of Alora for lots of money. I'm sure it's worth a lot, but I don't think that's going to happen. Okay. Is this? No, this one. Okay, I got one more video here. There was actually a kid right behind her, and it just looked like it was about ready to kiss Alora on the cheek, so I love that picture. This is a giraffe center, and I never understood, I never learned if it was a rehabilitation place or if they were kept there permanently, but they built a pavilion so you could go up and be on the same level with the giraffes. Okay, you click play on this one. Get a little closer. There we go.
Back and forth. Whoops, I missed that one.
And I decided it must be like popcorn or something, because there was a group of about 100 kids before us, and they had all fed him too. And he just kept wanting more and more and more, so it must not be very filling. All right, my turn. And if you don't keep feeding them, they will leave. It's recording.
Ow. Yeah. Oh, yuck.
Should I try that?
Yeah, let me tell you.
Oh, gosh.
Very sad because the saliva is antiseptic. One of the patient.
He tried to tell me that because they eat from the acacia tree, their saliva doesn't have any germs in it. I'm thinking that's like dogs. You should have a dog lick your wound, Yeah.
I got it. Ooh, that's disgusting.
All right, that's the gist of that. So I figure you're in Africa, you need to just try everything once, right? So yeah. Finally, we got home. We were very happy. This is in Wichita, to sleep in a big, comfy bed and have a bathtub. The only bathtub I ever saw was in Maurice's master bath. Even in the hotel, even in the tourist hotel that's supposed to cater to tourists, there was no bathtub, and I take a bath like every night. So I was real happy to be back, and regular toilets with regular toilet paper. And that is all. I just want to really tell everybody thank you so much for letting me go. It's because of all your gifts that I could go. And it was just an absolutely fabulous, incredible experience. God really moved in the services. It wasn't real obvious, but they would come up to me afterwards and just shake my hand, and they couldn't express it. A lot of them didn't know enough English, but you could really tell that their hearts were touched and changed. And it really was just because we're there. And it wasn't because I was an amazing preacher or anything. I think it was just because I was a white person from America who took the time to go. And so I just want to encourage anybody, if it tugs on your heart, I'll be going again sometime before too long. So.
I don't think we have time for questions. We're probably going to have to wrap it up. But Kara will be telling more details, I'm assuming. Aren't you? almost. But anyway, if you know someone that would like more information about that, have them get in contact with Kara or come to the evening when she's going to talk about that. So got a lot of stuff on the back table, interesting things. She'll be back there. You can ask her questions. And I want to thank you as well. As difficult as it was to have her go, I know it was a real blessing for her to be over there. So you want to just go ahead and pray and close, or why don't we do that? Why don't we go ahead and close? Let's all bow our heads and pray. Father, I thank you so much, Lord, for the calling you've put on Kara's life and for the adventure and blessing that she was able to have and give to the people of Kenya. Lord, I pray that you would stir our hearts as well as is needed, that we would understand if there's a part we're supposed to play in helping our brothers and sisters across the sea. Lord, I pray your blessing on them now as they are wrapping up their day, that you would remind each of them how much you love them, and that you would, in your care and wisdom, show them in very real ways that you are their God and that they have value. Lord, help us to understand it as well, that we are your people and that we are cared for and that you do love each and every one of us. And Lord, help us to share that with those around us as well, especially those that don't know you, that they could be blessed with your love and that they can have your spirit inside of them. Thank you, Father. In Jesus' name, amen.